take a seat up here on these blue seats if you would like. Get Wendy on the front row here at the camera.
You want to go in on the second one? Wendy, where would you like to sit?
Go down.
You want your boys around you?
Oh, no, that's good.
You let you sit on the other. Grandpa, you want to sit right here?
Come down, Wanda.
Good job. Michael's up. He's got all the music linked to his phone, so. Lance has it in his hand. Hey, Lance, where's your camera? And so what's the view? I would mark that here. It gets that whole thing, so you want people to come up and talk. Okay. Wendy, they're ready. They're ready when you're ready.
Are we waiting for anybody else?
I don't think so.
Does anybody need a program? Want to hand these out?
I'll take one, please.
Hand out a few programs.
So we need a program before we start up here.
Joanne, please come sit down.
Yeah.
Will you over here?
Julie's gonna hold them.
Anyone over here? You got time for one? Anyone back there?
Are you doing okay? Good. I'd like to sit here. I can scoot over too.
That's good. Is that stable enough? Guess you should be okay, I hope.
And just a reminder, if you haven't signed the book and you'd like to, please do so. Hey Mike, tell everyone to turn the ringers off. Ringer off.
Good afternoon and welcome to the funeral service for Karl Stocksmith. We're grateful to have all of you here in attendance and thankful for this beautiful day in November to be here. As a quick reminder, if you have your cell phones, if you could put them on silent or turn them off so there's no interruptions during the services, we would appreciate that. We will follow the program as much as we can. There may be a few surprises along the way, but we'll do our best to follow along. So we will, my name is Mike Sandberg. I'm one of Karl's sons, and I'll be conducting today. I think everyone will be participating, and if you're not on the program, there is an open mic. If you have a thought that you'd like to share about Karl, there will be some time set aside later in the program for anyone that would like to say a few words today to Wendy or about Karl, because he touched a lot of lives. So we're grateful for that. So we will start with opening prayer by Karl's brother Kim Smith. Following the prayer, the obituary reading will be by Karl's son, the Prince, Henry, and he will also share his talk or his remarks that he's prepared after reading that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Following Henry, Chewy, Karl's second son, we'll say, third son, one of the boys, he will speak and share his remarks, and then I will follow Chewy.
So appropriate.
Kim, would you like to come up? I'll bring the microphone over to you.
dear eternal Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity today to gather as friends and family and many other relationships to honor Karl and Wendy and to share love with each other. We're grateful for the character that Karl was and the blessing that he gave us through the years of his insightful ways, but unconventional, but very eloquent. Please bless us as we're meeting today, that we might be able to show our love for each other, for this family organization that has done extraordinarily well, and that we might be able to enjoy the mountains and the times around us, as well as the I say these things in Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you all for being here. This is Karl Smith's obituary. It is with sorrow that we announce the passing of Karl Smith, husband, father, grandfather, and brother, at 3:21 p.m., Thursday, October 30th, 2020, a time and date that were of significance to his family. Karl's passing was sudden and unexpected and apparently resulted from recent complications of a surgical procedure that he underwent a number of years ago. It would be an understatement to say that Karl was a most colorful individual who lived life at full throttle. He loved life and he loved people, and they loved him in return. Throughout his life, Karl enjoyed an amazing facility to make money, and he was very generous to those about him. Some might suggest that he was too generous, but Karl would disagree. He was always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. He especially enjoyed treating the waitstaff at restaurants, resorts, and other similar places well. To paraphrase from one of his favorite movies, Karl did not believe in tipping, he believed in over-tipping, frequently leaving more than the cost of the meal as a tip for a waiter or waitress. Over the years, more than several waitresses struggling to make ends meet were literally reduced to tears by his generosity. The first time Karl went to a new restaurant, he was treated in a similar fashion to other diners. On subsequent visits, he was treated as visiting royalty. The University of Utah was not the school from which Karl received his college degree, but he was a huge fan and supporter of the Utes. When he moved to Provo, he took delight in displaying a 10-foot red-lighted U on game days, especially on days when the Utes and BYU Cougars played. As his neighbors came to know him, they laughed and loved him for it. Karl took special delight in pointing out to his Provo brothers, both BYU alumni, the Utes' uninterrupted string of football victories over the Cougars in recent years. Trips to their father's hometown in Snowflake, Arizona were always a special summer treat for the young Smith boys and their cousins. During one of those visits, when Karl was only about 5 years old, he found and appropriated a bayonet that his Uncle Richard had brought home at the end of World War II. At the time, Karl was so small that the bayonet dragged on the ground when he tied it to his belt. From that beginning, Karl amassed a collection of many thousands of bayonets, and for decades he collected and restored what ultimately became the world's largest single collection of World War II military land vehicles and artillery. He loved our veterans and hosted many gatherings and patriotic programs for veterans and their families at the military museum that he established in Tooele, Utah. For many years, Karl also hosted dinner and a 4th of July celebration at his Tooele Museum with fireworks that far exceeded the shows put on by the town and county of Tooele. It was always an exciting time when the firemen and equipment hired from the town raced around to extinguish any fires ignited by these fireworks. Karl was born in Red Bank, New Jersey, as he would say, on June 13th, 1947, after his mother and older brother had traveled there to be with her parents, having left a marriage that was not successful. There she met Aisel Henry Smith Jr., who was serving in the Eastern States Mission of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. After his mission, he courted Karl's mother and they married. Subsequently, Henry adopted both Karl and Richard as his own. Karl was very proud of his adoptive heritage and was close to and greatly admired by the large Smith clan. In recent years, Karl and Wendy sponsored a number of reunions of Smith cousins, ensuring that financial considerations never precluded anyone from attending. He was much loved by all of his Smith relatives for this and for the man he was. Karl loved his family, his friends, adrenaline-driven exhilaration on his razors, his black Ford truck, his Montana ranch, and he was always happiest when he had a fresh pack of camel studs close at hand. For those of us whom Karl has left, his passing is immensely sad, but we reflect on the reunion he is enjoying with his parents, grandparents, and other loved ones who preceded him in death. Indeed, some have wondered if perhaps they were having a party to celebrate Karl's arrival. As one of us who loved and admired him noted, wherever he is, Karl is the party. We will miss him terribly. Karl is survived by his wife Wendy, sons Travis, Michael, wife Emily, Matthew, Chewy, married to Amanda, and Henry. Grandchildren Tiana, Tevin, Talon, Ryan, Madeline, Jackson, Catherine, Lily, Otis, Oscar, and Ozzy, and his brothers Richard, Raymond, Kim, Fred, and Greg. One brother, Scott, and one grandchild, Benjamin, preceded him in death. Now I will read a personal letter. Dear Dad, during your time in this realm, you were a distinguished figure, significant voice, and exemplary model for everyone who knew and surrounded you. You taught me a multitude of invaluable attributes to follow, include the capacities to be dauntless, a little wild, pragmatic, wise, charismatic, to always seek more knowledge, intellect, and the creativity to utilize it, to always be a dreamer without bounds, charitable and kind to all, and to always retain composure and integrity when approaching any circumstance. I have vivid recollections of the abundance of fond memories we shared together. I recall as a child the time you spent building Legos and scale models of airplanes and cars with me. The Lego assembly sparked an interest for me in creativity through the pursuit of my own designs. I was infatuated with fighter jets, and so at 10 years old he took me to the Aviation Challenge, an aviation camp for young boys interested in fighter planes in California. When it came time for our final Top Gun campaign on the simulators, all the other fathers took the pilot position while the boys were co-pilots. You embraced the fact that I had spent extensive hours on my computer playing fighter pilot games, so you put me in the pilot position instead. Needless to say, we dominated the field by a significant margin. Then came the instructor versus client paintball gun war. Like a frontline general, you led us to a sweet victory, and the instructors, shocked and impressed, said that was the first time they lost. I have memories of jeeping with you through all the wild terrain, and you teach me to shoot Colt 1911 45 since the early age of 4. I remember you playing piano when I was young while I did my best interpretive dances in the living room, which inspired me to start taking piano lessons at 5. I recall you taking me on exhilarating rides in your sports cars, which piqued my interest in racing go-karts and skiing, subsequently pushing the human limits of speed in any arena, and furthermore being so supportive of me throughout my competitive skiing years. I never could shake my lust for going fast that I inherited from you. In the final years, my greatest times with you were taking our Polaris Razors side-by-sides out and pushing the limits of off-road machine, while captivated by the immense natural beauty of our landscapes. I know how much you loved your ranch, and we enjoyed our time there as well, with you every other weekend. It was certainly a treat. As I now reflect on the past or sequences of life moments I took, I can derive a multiplicity of my adult passions directly to you. The Legos converted and manifested into a master's degree in architectural design. The love of military craft and guns developed into a shared enjoyment of your world-class collection of military land vehicles and armament, including tanks, half-tracks, fully automatic guns, and cannons. I can attribute any music talent I possess and love of music to you playing the piano for me as a kid, or waking up to Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones every Saturday morning. I'm still a fairly proficient daring skier due to your support. Your enthusiasm for razors and off-roading led my brother Travis and I to travel around the West racing side-by-sides, made possible by our single sponsor, Smith Bail Bonds, an imaginary company whose slogan was, "Let us get you before your cellmate does." One of the most remarkable qualities you exhibited was to always allow your sons to follow their own passions, so long as we endeavored for the best of our abilities. But I feel I can attest on behalf of all my brothers, Chewy, Michael, and Travis, that deep down inside we all wanted to be more like you. After I finished college and moved back to Salt Lake City from Portland, you asked if I would come work for you in the office. And through your persuasive fashion, you talked me into it. I felt a bit conflicted initially because rigid business and dealing in historical war machines of destruction was basically the antithesis for designing ecological, sustainable solutions for future urban fabrics and experiential architecture space. On the contrary, though, the observations and lessons you imparted upon me during this adventure, I learned tactics for navigating real-life circumstances that cannot be taught in a scholarly environment. I can say today with 100% certainty that I made the right decision, and there is nothing in the world I would trade for the intensive time I was able to spend with you on a daily basis for the last 6 years. Dad, you were a magnetizing natural-born leader, influence, and inspiration for all. I could not have hand-selected a more intelligent, expressive, courageous, munificent, hilarious, cool, inherently badass, legendary, and loving father. Thank you for being such a remarkable, great husband to my mother, Wendy, as well. I love you and miss you, Dad. I carry with me the ambitions to make you proud and live a full life that proliferates your legendary legacy. And I look forward to the... And I look forward to the day I get to see you again. Furthermore, I promise to take care of Mom in the meantime. Your son, Henry, a.k.a. the Prince.
Wow, if I knew he was going to be that good, I would have offered to go first. Well, it's nice seeing you all, and I'm either going to read this at record speed or struggle to get to the end, so please bear with me. I'm picturing y'all in your underwear to make sure I can get through this without breaking up. In doing so, Jeff, I just want to tell you you could use just a little more exercise. I've known many of you for many years, and it's hard to be in front of you giving this talk to celebrate the life of Karl Smith. Our dad was someone to look up to, someone to follow, someone to admire and idolize, someone to be proud of and someone to brag about. Someone to complain to, someone to learn from, and someone to respect. Someone to listen to and someone to talk to. Someone to try and impress, sometimes rebel against, and someone most of all, with whom to share successes and memories. I'm so incredibly grateful and happy that I can stand here today and tell you that I've had all of this and much, much more with my dad, Karl Smith. All of his boys have been blessed to have had him as our father. To say I love my dad would be an understatement, pardon me. And to say I'm going to miss him would be an even greater understatement. It's going to be difficult not having Karl on the end of a phone, calling me to talk smack or telling me a funny story in his extremely colorful manner, with any life or business advice with which I happen to be needing at the time, or just to lend an ear when I was frustrated and needed to vent. Dad was always there for everyone, family, neighbors, colleagues, or friends, which of course turned out to be his greatest collection of all, as proved by all of you here today, those who turned out yesterday, and those joining us online today. I wonder what he would think about streaming his funeral service. I'm sure we can all imagine the colorful language that he would use to describe such an event. He was a very serious individual about many things, but was never afraid of having a laugh at his own expense, or of course anyone else's. Dad was hardworking, compassionate, generous towards everyone, and deserved the success and rich life that he enjoyed. He taught me many, many things, but I think most importantly, he gave us the ability to know that if you really put your mind to something and work hard, anything is possible, and never to be afraid to give anything a shot. He was encouraging in everything I did, even when he found out that I was leaving college to become a tour manager for a rock band. His attention to detail and perfectionism used to drive me insane, but later in life I learned that I also appreciated his madness through my own attention to detail. We didn't always see eye to eye on everything, of course. When I was in my teens, I thought I knew everything, and we had some real run-ins, but all these years later, I've come to also appreciate those moments. It was hard to pick a story to tell after going through the Rolodex, and with so many of them, and one that would also be appropriate for this setting. So one quick PG story of many, and then I'll excuse myself. I was 15 years old, and Dad and I were headed to Kolob Mountain to join the Sampson family for the annual deer hunt. We were supposed to leave around 1 p.m., but as many of you knew Karl back in those days, you knew that a 1 p.m. departure actually meant anywhere between 4 and 7:30 p.m. And even that was iffy. So we finally got on the road right around 8 p.m. after having stocked up on a cooler of supplies, which included rolls, mayo, and 5 pounds of Black Forest ham, sliced paper thin, of course. He would always ask for it to be so thin it was translucent. Made for a hell of a sandwich, and it's still enjoyed these days by my kids. As we were leaving the Smith's grocery store, he asked me if I wanted to drive, as he was feeling tired from a long day in the office. The 15-year-old me rejoiced at the opportunity, and I took control of the helm and pointed us due south towards Zion National Park. A few hours into the trip, he awoke from his slumber and started talking about the idea of a wager for the first person to kill a deer. I thought 20 seemed like a fair bet. At the time, I had a job and can actually cover it if I lost. In previous years, I would have used his money to pay my debts, which he always found amusing, and gladly accepted his own money with a smile. Another hour or so into the trip, we were on the south side of Cedar City, and there were a few dead deer on the road. Again, my 15-year-old self remembered driver's ed and the rule of not swerving to avoid an animal, so I did what any responsible driver would do. I ran right over those dead deer's legs. Without skipping a beat, Dad reached into his pocket and handed me $20 for hitting and participating in the first killing of the deer. He told that story for years to follow and always ended with his infectious laugh, which of course made everyone else laugh. Karl was a legend. He was larger than life, and I can stand here before you and tell you my only regret, other than having lost him too soon, was that he wasn't able to get more quality time with my kids, Otis, Oscar, and Ozzy, who are currently watching at home in Nashville, Tennessee. Hi, guys. We spoke many times over the last year about us moving back west, and he, of course, replied that he couldn't wait to take us to the ranch and spend more time with his grandkids. I will miss him dearly, and thank God every day for the time I had with him. It brings me great comfort to think he will finally be reunited with his mother, Gwendolyn, whom he tragically lost at such a young age, and with Henry Smith, the man who set the standard for everyone to follow and the namesake for my little brother. Dr. Ewart and Marla, of course. They waited a long time for him to come home. May they all find comfort in each other's love. On behalf of Wendy, Travis, Michael, Henry, all of your grandkids, all of your family members, your memory will be a blessing and bring us all comfort. Dad, just like your great-grandfather used to say, it's all part of heading west. Rest in power, Karl Smith. Was that being streamed live?
Nobody saw anything. So Matthew traveled out here last week when Wendy gave him news of the situation, packed a light bag, and thankfully Karl had was a little bigger in certain times of his life, and Chewy was able to find a suit that fit. So that's a Karl Smith suit right there. All right. Everybody knows the Jeff Foxworthy and the redneck jokes, and you might be a redneck if, so this is my version of Jeff Foxworthy, and I hope this hits home with a few of us. But these are, you might be a friend of Karl's if. So you might be a friend of Karl's if you have a Weber 3-burner grill in your backyard that you may or may not have paid for. You might be a friend of Karl's if you were told to check out her beautiful big blue eyes. You might be a friend of Karl's if you enjoy a Cure 81 ham during Christmas. You might be a friend of Karl's if your holiday reindeer have been repositioned to create baby reindeer. You might be a friend of Karl's if you haven't eaten your entree because you filled up on appetizers. You might be a friend of Karl's if you don't smoke, but you've spent a lot of money on Camels. You might be a friend of Karl's if you let him do the thinking on something. And finally, you might be a friend of Karl's if you've checked out her arthritic hands. He was quite the prankster, and one of the jokes that he did a while ago to Dave Nelson was the story was going around yesterday at his viewing, and Dave Nelson put a golf ball in Karl's casket, and that golf ball is significant in the fact that I played a lot of golf with Karl, and he played a lot of golf back before he found razoring. And playing golf with Karl was not golf. It was like playing golf on a military base or something. It was just not golf. The flags were dropping, coins were jingling, water was being said, lots of distractions. But one of the things Karl liked to do was, if you hit it out in the weeds, he was the first guy to help you go find it, because he would drive his cart right on top of your golf ball as you looked for your ball, and you couldn't find it. So Dave's story is Karl parked right on top of his golf ball. Dave goes on to lose the hole. $50, I think, was what he paid Karl. Went home for the weekend, didn't think anything of it. He comes to work Monday morning, and on his office desk was the same golf ball that he had lost. So that's a great prank. Another one that I like to hear, and I haven't tried this yet, but it's a good one. He gave, I believe it was Kim, he gave him 3 $100 gift cards to Carrabba's Italian restaurant for his birthday one year. So Kim immediately calls the family, takes everybody to dinner, runs up a $400 or $500 dinner bill, hands the gal the gift cards, no money on them, $0. So Kim paid for dinner. There's a couple of pranks that he talked to me about that he wanted to do, and he messed with all of his boys, but these two are specifically toward Chewy. And there's no hiding the fact that Chewy is a Democrat, and he's happy to tell you, and that's fine. We still love him. And Karl told me about a month ago, he said, I'm thinking of sending Trump a nice donation in Chewy's name, with Chewy's name, address, and phone number. They might call him. The other thing he wanted to do was, and this was kind of when he was golfing a lot, he wanted to play Augusta, and that's where they host the Masters golf tournament. And he kind of talked to Chewy about, hey, Mike, you, Chewy, let's go and we'll play. But he told me in secret, he said, we're not taking Chewy. We're going to go, and somewhere on about the 13th fairway, we're going to FaceTime Chewy, and he's going to see that we're at Augusta. And I'm just going to ask him, hey, son, what you doing today? So a couple of great pranks that didn't get to happen, but that's his kind of humor, and he was fantastic. It's been said he's taught us all some great things. If you like doing something, just go for it, and he'd support you 100%. Something he learned in his older age is he learned compassion, and he would tell me that all the time. He said his father-in-law, Doyle, my grandfather, was the man that taught him that. And he said that Doyle taught me compassion, and he taught me that you can't spoil your kids by loving them too much. And so he always told me, just love your kids, love them, and show compassion everywhere you go. So we'll miss you, Dad. We love you, and rest in peace. I'd like to invite my family up, and this is for Wendy. This is the family. She's always called us the Von Trapp family. We're not nearly as talented, but we're willing. So
Oh, you just locked out.
this is a song for Karl from, I don't know if everybody's going to get up here. Who's coming? I got to get my phone on. Alright, we're going to see if this works. We hope you enjoy it. Maybe it'll work. Okay, here we go. Can you hear anything? Okay. Nope. Okay, let me see. Let's switch sides. Amateur hour. It's gonna be fine though. We're gonna get it.
If you have to go a cappella, don't be afraid.
Oh, we're afraid. We're already afraid. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friends, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall, and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my share of losing. And now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way. Oh no, not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my
Yes, it was my way.
Thank you. Who has my program? Where'd it go? Okay, I'll borrow this one. The practice paid off, guys. Thank you for doing that. All right, I'd like to invite Jeff Peterson up, brother-in-law, for his remarks. Following Jeff, we'll invite Greg to come up. And then after Greg speaks, I'll be here with the mic, and if you'd like to come up and share a word or two, you're welcome to do that. We'll have an open mic. Thanks, Mike.
Well, I hope I do as well as everybody else. Yeah, because I've been making notes over the last week or so since I heard of Karl's passing, and I thought of a lot of things over the years. I first met Karl because Wendy took my 3-year-old daughter to a bar Karl was at where he bought her 50 helium balloons that Wendy brought home in the car. I was like, who is this guy? A couple weeks later, I get home from work and Karl and Wendy are at my house. I get out of my car and they're sitting outside, and the first words Karl ever said to me was, "Do you have any vodka around here?" And over the next few years, well, there were a few drinking stories. I remember he lived at Old Farm in Salt Lake, and one night he was coming home from the bar and he saw the ducks out by the pond, and he took his Jeep across there and killed several of them. I think they gave him a bill for $400. He said, "I think $25 for each duck is pretty reasonable, don't you?" Over the next years, he ended up buying a condo in Bountiful, up by the Bountiful Golf Course, along the number 9T. And Chewy would remember this. We used to sit in the TV room downstairs, and Karl had a megaphone that played all these different tones and everything, and the tee box was right down below, and we would time it to distract the golfers, and when they hit a bad shot, then Karl would set off this laughing box, and we heard a lot of swearing coming off that golf course at us over over that one summer. It was pretty funny. Then I started golfing with Karl, and Karl's motto on the golf course was, "If you're not cheating, you're not trying." He was a master of the foot wedge, and no matter where he hit it out, he always somehow had a clear shot to the green. We even caught him teeing it up in sand traps sometimes. So you had to watch him close if you had money on it. But over the years, well, trying to beat he and Rand was almost impossible. They knew all the tricks. Let's see. also, over the years, I learned a lot of Karl's sayings that he used all the time. Like he combined a couple of well-known phrases into as an answer to an obvious question. He would say, "Does the Pope shit in the woods?" And then, of course, any bump in the road of life was met with, "It's all part of heading west," which I know everybody's heard him say, and it's already been used today, but, well, it was on this piece of paper, so I'm going to use it again. And of course, trust me. So, Wendy always said you could always tell Karl was lying because his lips were moving. Also, Karl liked to hang nicknames on people. We were married with children, making me Al Bundy, and Peg and Kelly and Bud are all back here. And I see Karl's business associates out here, and I think the only one that I know their full name is Dave Nelson, who is the gay peacock. And also I see Foghorn and Mongo are here also. And also Miss Goodbody, and of course the perv. Karl was never PC, and somehow with his charisma he always got away with it, and I think he wouldn't want us to miss him. He would just tell you it's all part of heading west.
My name's Greg Ewert, and I was, I still am Karl's youngest brother. And Wendy asked me to say a couple things today. I need to warn you, I'm an engineer, so I overthink everything. And I tend to use words that are too large for the appropriate circumstance, so you'll forgive me. There are a couple of things I wish I could say about Karl this afternoon. I wish that I could say I had been close to Karl in my childhood. I wish I could say we'd had long talks together about what's important. I wish I could say that I'd come up for a razor adventure in Moab. But I can't. What I can say is that I am his younger, good-looking brother, or at least that's what he said at the beginning of every phone call with me. And then I'm glad to have a chance to say a few words. I'm sure my experience with Karl has been different than all of yours and your kids, but that's all I can speak to today, so forgive me if I leave something out. What we all know is that Karl was bigger than life. When I was a kid, I remember he would, if he wasn't driving to Phoenix in some grotesquely overdone Jeep, which he promised to never do again, he was arriving in a Di Tommaso Pantera mid-engine sports car. When he arrived via private jet, he was picked up by a Bentley. He was like an Old Testament patriarch with many wives, though not simultaneously, and great wealth, most of which he had folded up in his front pocket. He also seemed to me a contradiction. Though he had his own barbershop, he always wore a hat. He lived in a Georgian estate, but seemed happiest smoking on the porch just off the kitchen. Though his wife defined glamour, He dressed as though anything beyond simple comfort was a nuisance to be endured but not encouraged. Though the doctor, that's how we referred to my father, felt it necessary to ask Karl to move out from home as a young man, Karl returned as an adult to provide a home for him when our mom could no longer care for him alone. Though I was a baby when he left home and didn't share the same parents, he made it clear I was his family. Family stability seemed to elude him early in life and motivated him later. He was a contradiction to me. But I think we're all contradictions. We've all had jarring, joyous, devastating, and dismantling experiences. I suspect if we lifted up the hoods on each of our souls, we'd find a lot of broken pieces and tape and wire and strip bolts we've used to put ourselves back together again just to move forward. And if we're honest with ourselves, we realize we're all jury-rigged, squeaking, wheezing, overheating jalopies that require more than a little extra attention and patience. Most of us would prefer to hide our contradictions and our idiosyncrasies. I've come to believe that for Karl, family was not a place where you hid your weirdness, but a place where you made space for it. He celebrated his own and then invited us over to do the same and to play a lot of bad golf, because all of my brothers are bad golfers, or to eat chili rellenos and listen to Barb Bouchard, who I still don't know where he came from, or to watch flame-jumping buffaloes or car-crushing tanks. And this is the one thing when I think about Karl that I remember most. As we sat out on the porch once on one of my visits, just outside of the kitchen, I asked him why he kept pulling all of us back in. And he looked at me and he said, "Because you're family, and that's what you do." And then we sat quietly because what more was there to say?
Greg, that was well engineered. Jeff, thank you. Henry, Chewy, thank you for your remarks. Sandberg family, thanks for the vocals. We're gonna turn some time over to you. Kim, come on up. We'll let you be the first. If you have a few words, maybe slide on up here. We can sit on the Inglesby bench and maybe the on-deck circle.
I'm Kim Boyce. Karl was the best friend I ever had. And he gave me a nickname. He gave everybody a nickname. You know, I went golfing with him once, and right after that, my name was Double Bogey. But one thing I could never figure out is how a friend of his got the nickname of Pecker Breath. I don't know. But I must say, Karl was flamboyant. I was flying into Utah to meet with Karl, and he said, "Boyce, hey, don't worry about it, man. I'm going to pick you up at the airport." I said, "Okay, that'll be good, man. Pick you up at the airport." "Well, there's going to be a guy pick you up at the airport, and Wendy has something to do with this." So I get to the airport, and I go outside, and the guy's got a sign that says, "Boyce." Well, the guy had tells on and a hat on. I said, "Yeah, that's me." He said, "Well, I got your ride." I said, "Where you parked?" "I'm about 5 cars up." Holy crap, that's a hearse. This big black hearse picked me up from the airport with my luggage and took me to Wingers after that. Another experience, which I think Rand was involved in, was I had a birthday, and Karl thought it'd be pretty funny if he got all these women's underwear and bras and all sorts of stuff and put them on my tree in my yard and on my door, every place in my yard. But what Karl didn't know is the wife and myself, we taught the 8-year-olds in primary, and we had 10 of them coming over to our house that day. So the kids couldn't walk over. They had to have their parents bring them over. So what do you think they thought of me and my wife when they saw bras, panties, and the whole 9 yards in my yard? That was a tough one to explain. I must say I know where Karl got his wealth. He always took Utah and gave me BYU on every single bet we ever had. He got rich with that. Another thought I have on that, matter of fact, I didn't prepare anything, but, you know, just had a couple things to say about him. You know, Karl was, behind every great person, behind them is a wonderful wife. Karl, he had his Wendy, his beautiful wife, and, you know, behind everything that happened, his 4th of July parties, his Christmas dinners, and the remodeling, that it was Wendy was the one that was there, and she was behind, she was doing all of that for him. I'll always never forget Karl. He taught me so many things in business. He is a reason why I'm here in Utah, is in Silicon Valley, and he took our company public, and he says, if I do that, you're going to have to move out here. I said, yeah, whatever. Well, it all happened, and we moved out here. He liked to say that it's right here in your backyard, and it was right here in our backyard because he loved the mountains. Karl has helped many, many people, thousands of people that I know of. He's helped them monetarily, and he's helped them with his kind spirit, which he helped me out as well through many hard times. So Karl, I love you. You're like a big brother to me. And I hope you're making our loved ones in heaven right now laugh and be happy. I just want to say I love you, and until we meet again, take care.
Hi, I'm Catherine Smith. I'm married to Karl's brother, whom he always called Freddie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you take it off so we can see your and your beautiful face.
Because Karl was bigger than life itself, I feel that he's here today, and I didn't get to say goodbye. I met Karl and Wendy 9 years ago, and I watched them, and we came together a few months later, and I watched them again, and I remember settling up to Wendy one day and saying, tell me what you find in Karl. Because Wendy is such a Venus, and, well, Karl, he did it his way. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, he is funny. He is kind. And as I've grown to know them, they are both funny and kind. And they are both generous. And I'm talking about generous in personality. They love and they accept people for exactly who they are. Now, Wendy never told me he was a liar and a cheat. But Karl, I love you anyway. Thank you for always making me feel like I was the most important person in the room, and that I was beautiful. Love you too, Wendy.
For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Gil Athey. At my office, I'm known as the pooper. Whenever Karl called, he would ask for the pooper. And then my receptionist or my paralegal would buzz me and say, it's your best friend. Because that's what he always told me. It's his best friend. And he certainly was my best friend. Amanda Bandley wrote a poem that begins with, when special people touch our lives, then suddenly we see how beautiful and wonderful our world can really be. It goes on to describe some various things, but when special people touch our lives, we truly begin to see what our world is all about. It wasn't suddenly with Karl that I began to see, but over the years, the more time I spent with Karl, the more wonderful I saw his world become. And because of that, I saw my world become even brighter. His love for Wendy was a love that is indescribable, and he didn't share it often with a lot of people, but he shared it with his best friend, how much he cared and loved for her. He showed it in every way. And you boys, his sons, he talked about you often. He was proud of you in everything you did. He was truly an amazing father, an amazing husband, and an amazing friend. When loved ones are gone, they are really never lost, okay? Think about it. Loved ones are really never lost. They are left behind in their friends, and Karl's friends are everywhere, every race, color, creed, every religion, every political persuasion. He loved people. And those friends will carry on. Those of you who are family know his commitment to goals. His commitment to goals will live on throughout history. And those of us who know him will continue his commitment to goals as best we can. And I know you, his posterity, will continue his commitment to goals. I love Karl Smith like a brother. He was my best friend. I wished I could have said goodbye in a different fashion, but today, Karl, goodbye. I love you.
Hi, I'm Leonard Birmingham. I was Karl's lawyer for 27 or so years. And I couldn't tell you about the 13 or so before that today. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Karl always had an entourage. And you could walk into Haggis or any club. And he always had 8 or 10 people with him. Me, I was a lawyer 4 days a week, and I was a cook the 5th day. Every Friday I cooked at Canella's restaurant. For 25 years, I think they opened it on my birthday. But what happened over the years was I'd be in there drinking maybe at Haggis or someplace like that. He'd walk Karl with his crew. And he'd say, Leonard, we need food. I knew what that meant. He wasn't going to order from the menu. I didn't know the people that owned the Haggis, except that I was a customer. And I would talk my way to the kitchen. And I would get the cooks aside. You guys go over that way. You guys go over that way. And I would open up the freezer, refrigerator, whatever they had, I made the food. I bought the food. Carl's deal was he had to tip the waitresses all the C note, which he did. And so they loved that. They loved it dearly. And my friend the Canella's, they were just down the street. Canella's restaurant was about 2 blocks from the office, and we often, these were in the drinking days before I think Wendy brought him out of those, and that's about the same time I quit, was right after that. But we would go down to Canella's at night, I would, and a couple of my friends, Joe, and who owned it, and we would cook all night, Thursday night, Friday night. We would cook anything you could imagine. I mean, we were usually loaded enough. I remember one day we were cooking pumpkin pies, and I pulled out the rack, and slipped a little bit, and we had pumpkin across all the lines. But Karl would come down there all the time, and he enjoyed those. So it was about a month ago, the Canellas announced that they were going to close their restaurant. And they were closing it because of COVID-19. And I just heard about it, and but the next call I get is Karl. This is maybe a month ago. Says, Leonard, they're closing Canella's. He says, God, we got to go down there and open it up. We'll call it Lenny's. We'll remodel the goddamn place, and we'll be ready to go. I said, Karl, you know, I'm still practicing. I got work. I got the boy. Don't worry about that. He was on me 3 days in a row to come down and go down and look at Canella's to open it up. I can tell you honestly that when I heard Karl had passed away on Saturday, it was just a shock, and it didn't really hit me. But that night, I know I tried to call Wendy, and I couldn't talk. That night I had 3 dreams. They were all in different restaurants. And we were doing what we did all the time before. And when I woke up the next morning, what I knew is I'd lost a part of myself. Karl was family. My boys were family to Karl. We were all family together. He treated us that way. And I too wished I could have said goodbye, Karl. And I kept telling, and I was walking around the house yesterday, I said, give me a sign, I know you're around here somewhere. And I'd still like one day, you know, you weren't quiet very often, so come on, speak up. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, turn around.
Oh, I wanted to say one other thing too. That's the cool thing about this cemetery. I used to drive around cemeteries all the time, I like them. This has got a pack of foxes, which fits Karl perfectly. There are like 20 of them over on the other side, and all these deer, and they're here every day. So it won't be long. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karl's younger brother, Raymond. I have a little bit different perspective on Karl, because I grew up with him, and I went to high school with him. So, as my wife and I and daughter drove into town yesterday, we made a stop at Will's Pit Stop there, the famous Will's Pit Stop, to get a drink. And I noticed above the door was a banner to Karl. And I thought, how great that is. So I went in and talked to the young clerk who was behind the counter. I says, that's really nice of the management to recognize Karl for his contributions. And this young clerk says, I so appreciate Karl. He said, my car was broken down and I couldn't fix it. And Karl made arrangements to get it fixed so I could get to work. And he says, I so appreciate it. And to me, that says it all. That really emphasizes Karl. And he didn't do it because he has the money. He did it because he had the heart to do it. And Karl had a big heart. As he and I were growing up together, and me as the younger brother, I took the brunt of his anger. And he and I duked it out a lot, even passing each other in the hallways at the high school. We'd punch each other. And it was kind of hard. When he turned 18 and drove away in his Austin Healey, away from home, I said, good riddance. I was so glad to be, I thought, free again, free at last. Thank God I'm free at last. But, we lost contact for several years. But as I was raising my family and Karl was raising his family, we reconnected. And we had some great visits and great phone conversations. And we learned to love each other again. And he and Wendy, who is a godsend, have been nothing but kind and considerate and generous to me and my family. He treats my children as though they were his own. And I so love him for that. One thing I've learned from Karl is to value the worth of each individual, family, strangers, whoever, and appreciate the contributions they make, the talents and skills they have, and to look at each person as a child of God who has value. And don't worry about the character flaws or the addictions or the problems or the faults. I have a favorite country singer, Bonnie Raitt. Many of you have heard her. In one of her songs, she says, "We can't change the past, but we can leave it behind." So I see several boys here. This, learn to love your brothers. Get along with them, because when you're my age, you'll want to have a tight connection. And I thank Karl for that lesson that I learned. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Ashley Van Emmerich. I'm Karl's niece. My dad Jeff you heard from earlier. I just wanted to say a few things. If I'm not mistaken, I think I was actually the first one on the Peterson side to ever get to meet Karl. Wendy took me around quite a bit as a young one, and there's two very brief stories that I want to share. One's a little bit funny. The other just really warmed my heart. When I was 3 years old, they were living at Old Farm, and Wendy had me, and we were playing around. Karl was at work, and the phone rang. Wendy was trying to get me dressed, and if I remember, I was wearing maybe only socks. Ran up the stairs. Wendy chased after me. I thought it was so funny, and I was running away, turned and smacked my head right into the wall and cracked my head open. I mean, you can still see the scar if you're close enough. Poor Wendy was in hives for days afterwards, but after I was all cleaned up, we went to Karl's office. I don't know if it was that day or maybe another, but the first thing that he said to me was, "I heard you got blood on my floor." And he made light of kind of a traumatic experience, and I remember seeing his little jar of peanuts with the snakes inside. That was just always something that I remembered at a young age. But a few years ago, I had just moved into my new home with my husband, and it was the Peterson side of the family's year for Thanksgiving, and we always did it at Karl and Wendy's, and I was in a home finally that was large enough that I could have everyone over, and it really meant a lot to me to have them there. And as you know, Karl loved to be in the king's seat and the power position, and he loved to be in the comfort of his own home. But I called him at his office one day and I asked him if I could host Thanksgiving and if he would come, and he may not have known how much that meant to me, but it really meant a lot to me, and I will always love him, and I will always love you. I love you so much, Uncle Harley.
I'm going to do a quick fact check here. It's not the gay peacock, but this is the gay ostrich.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thank you for complimenting me on being a peacock instead of the ostrich. And I have a trophy attesting to that down at the office. The Gay Ostrich Trophy. I think I won that on several occasions. And I haven't lost it. My legs are still pretty. No, This is an unusual day. For the second consecutive day, I have not played golf. And for the second consecutive day, I think Karl and I are both in suits. And I think that's, I'd never imagined. I never imagined. Yeah, I was going to talk about that gay peacock remark, but it is gay ostrich. One thing that Karl always wanted to have, he said it and he lived it, was to have a legacy. And I think he, now, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not going to let Karl do the thinking. But he's left a legacy, without a doubt. There's no one that ever went into that museum in Tooele, I don't think, I can't even imagine, without shedding a tear. I never even served in the armed forces, and I cried when I walked in, because you knew what it stood for and what it meant. But the most important legacy he's left is his family, beginning with Wendy, who I don't know how in the hell he ever got on the straight track, an impossibility. And his sons, Travis, Chewy, Mike, and Henry, you're his legacy. When I think of him, I will think of you. I think we all will. Thank you, Karl.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Zach Van Emmerich. I'm Ashley's husband. Since she told her story about how she met Karl, I'm going to tell mine. So we'd been dating a couple weeks, maybe 3 or 4, and she came over to my place and was like, hey, let's go over, and my aunt and uncle are having a Christmas party. It's like, okay, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm like, am I okay to go in this? She's like, oh yeah, you're fine, don't worry about it. Okay, cool. So we head out and we pull up to the driveway of your beautiful home, and I just shrunk in my seat. Oh, I'm in jeans and a t-shirt, and you bring me here. And then I walk in the front door, and there's this grandiose opening, and a string quartet, and my heart just kept sinking. Oh. First impression, this is what I'm going to leave to my girlfriend's family. A tattooed guy standing there with a short sleeve t-shirt at a beautiful, gorgeous party. People are in 3-piece suits, looking at me like I just broke into somewhere. Anyway, so I walk back, and she's like, hey, come back, meet my Uncle Karl. Okay, all right, great, here we go. Okay. So we go back, and we step outside, he's outside smoking, and I see him sitting there, and he's got a polo shirt and jeans, and that was my first indicator. Okay, I might be okay, I might be all right. And Ashley comes over and introduces me, and he looks at me, like looks me up and down. Okay, here it comes. What do you do? And I told him what I did, told him what I've done, and instantly, right away, and just to add the foundation, I was in the Marine Corps, and I'm currently a police officer, and from that moment on, Karl treated me with the utmost respect, and I know exactly what everyone's talking about. The way he treated people made you feel like you were the only person in the room, and that's how he made me feel. And seeing his museum and how much he loved that, every time I brought another vet around, he made it a priority to thank him. And it really spoke to Karl's character. Till Valhalla, brother.
Thank you to all that have shared your thoughts. Is there anyone else that would like to come share anything? Okay. With that, we have a musical presentation from Brooke. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because I don't know. Following Brooke, Karl's brother Richard will come and take the microphone, and he will dedicate the grave. Wendy, would you like to have a closing prayer after that? We should have a closing prayer. We'll figure that out between now and then. So Brooke's going to go, and then Richard will invite you to come on up.
While we're here alone and all is said and done, now I can let you know, because of all you've shown, I've grown enough to tell you. You'll always be inside of me. How many roads have gone by? So many words left unspoken. I needed to be by your side, if only to hold you forever in my heart. Forever you will be. And even when I'm gone, you'll be here in me forever. I dreamed that you were gone. I cried out trying to find you. I begged the dream to fade away, and please awaken me. But night took a hold of my heart and left me with no one to follow. The love that I lost to the dark, I'll always remember. Forever in my heart. Forever we will be. And even when I'm gone, you'll be here with me. Forever in my
Thank you, Brooke. Wendy wants us all to know that anytime Karl was, getting romantic, that's the song he used. That was Karl and Wendy's favorite song. Let's see. Rand, could I call on you to say a closing prayer? Thank you. Come right over here, Richard.
Our beloved Father in heaven, on this beautiful fall day, a bit overcast to match your mood, and yet we recognize the sun will shine again. At this time, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, and by the authority of the Holy Melchizedek priesthood, we consecrate this small piece of land, and we dedicate this grave as a place where our dear Karl Smith can rest in peace and harmony until such time as he shall be brought forth again by the power of the priesthood in the resurrection, when body and soul will be reunited, nevermore to be parted. We call a blessing down on this spot, that it might ever be a place of peace, that Wendy and Karl's family and friends who are gathered here might come and reflect on what an impact for good this good man had in their lives, reflect upon their association with him. And while we are sorrowful, Father, we reflect with happiness on the reunion that Karl has been able to have with a mother whom he never really got to know, and a father, Henry, who Karl looked up to. Karl was indeed a favorite of Henry's, and the other ancestors who have gone before. Pray that they might have a truly joyous time and reunion. Now, Father, we ask a blessing for Karl's family, for Wendy, that she might ever know of our love for her. We bless them that the time may come that they will be reunited, and in accord with thy will and their mutual desire, that their association might continue in the hereafter. Similarly, we ask blessings for his sons, for his grandchildren, that they might always remember the stature of the man whom we honor here today. Now, Father, there is one final blessing that we would ask, and that is when the day comes for Karl to stand before thee with Jesus Christ at his side as his advocate, that thou wouldst remember the love that we have for him, the generosity that he had for others, and the much good that he has done. Now we say these things, and we ask these blessings, and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, thank you to all that have participated and shared thoughts and been here today. I think just a couple of notes to finish and clean up. Wendy would like anyone, as you leave, if there are any flowers here or anything that you would look good in your home, Wendy would be happy if you would take something with you to remember that. Anything else?
There's also some flowers there for the grandkids or whoever wants to put a flower on top of it.
Okay. Any of the smaller kids or grandchildren, this little rose package right here, if you want to take a rose home with you, you're welcome to come and grab one of those. Okay. Oh, that's right. So after the closing prayer, we'll play Karl's real favorite song, and we're going to blast it. So wherever he is, he's going to hear it. So again, thank you for being here. Rand, come on up. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, at this time we bow our heads and we thank Thee for sending such a special spirit for all of us to appreciate and enjoy. A special thanks to all of the family and friends that have worked so hard to make this such a special service. At this time, we ask that you be with all of us, that we may all return to our own homes safely, and that no harm or accident will befall anyone. Another special blessing be with the family, be with all of us, to know that this is not the end, this is just the beginning. This we say in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.